We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Chesamid Beis in Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 98b. And the previous Amud, the Gemara was dealing with Rav Nachman's view of the Mishnah. Again, the Mishnah is dealing with a case where the Mashil and the Shoel are arguing whether the animal that died, was it a lent animal, in which case the Shoel would be responsible, or was it a rented animal, in which case the Shoel would not be responsible. And the Mishnah says that if the Mashil is certain and the Shoel is not certain, so Bori V'Shema, Bori Adif, and the Shoel has to pay. The person who is certain is going to prevail in that case. And that's a question on Rav Nachman, because Rav Nachman in general says that Bori V'Shema, we don't say Bori Adif in the sense that we don't allow the bori to take money from the person who's shema, because we say amotzi mechavero all of haraya. So the question was, how does Rav Nachman deal with our Mishnah? And the Gemara is in the middle of answering that question, and the Gemara says, according to Rami Bar Chama, there's a halacha by Modem and Mixas that it's not enough simply to partially admit, but you also have to partially deny, meaning to say, if you would admit to part of what is being claimed, but the rest you say, I don't know, that's not really a denial, that's not Modem and Mixas. And so Rav Nachman answered that the Mishnah is speaking about a case where anyway the person needs to take a shvuah, but he's not able to take a shvuah because of the fact that he says, I don't know, and so therefore in such a situation, mitoch sheni yachli shava, because he can't take a shvuah, that's why he's going to pay. And so the Gemara now is within Rami Bar Chama. How do you construct a case where he needs to take a shvuah but he's not able to? And the Gemara said that according to Rami Bar Chama, the end case of the Mishnah has to be with 4 cows, and 3 of them die, and the person who's the lender, he says the 3 that died are the ones that were being borrowed, therefore you're responsible. And the Gemara now continues that the Shoel responds, Shoel chada haya dvar me'olam. The Shoel says one of them, it's not even true, there was no such cow, v'chada in the she'ela mesa. One of them, yes, it was one that was borrowed that died, v'idach lo yadan, and the other one I don't know, idaschiras mesa udekaima de she'ela. If the one that was rented was the one that died, and the one that's still alive is the one that was borrowed, o de she'ela mesa udekaima de schiras, or the one that was borrowed is the one that died, and the one that's alive is the one that was rented. So in that situation, you have a partial admission, you have a partial denial, and then you have an I don't know, and therefore we say the mitoch she'enu yachal ishava mishalim, since he's not able to take a shvuah because he's saying he doesn't know, therefore he pays. That's how Rav Nachman would explain the Mishnah according to Rami Bar Chama. And Rashi explains chada lo haya dvar me'olam harei kfira. That's the denial. He says it never happened on one of them. V'chada in be'idan de she'ela mesa. The other one, yes, he admits to it was borrowed and it died, and harei hoda. So that's the admission. So you have that partial admission, but he's not able to take a shvuah because he says that he doesn't know regarding the other one, and therefore again we apply the rule of mitoch she'enu yachal ishava mishalim. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said ze omer she'ula. This one says that it was the borrowed one that died. That's what the lender says, and therefore he says the borrower is chayiv. V'ze omer sechura, and the borrower says no, it was the rented one that died, therefore he's not responsible. Yishava hasocher sheschura mesa. So the Mishnah said that the socher, the renter, swears that it was the rented one that died, and then he will be pater. And the Gemara says, v'yamai, why does he take a shvuah? Mashatanu lo hodelo, that which was claimed from him, he's not admitting to. He's admitting to something else entirely, and there should be no shvuah in that case. This next line of umasha hodelo lo tanu, what he admitted to was not being claimed, that the Gra takes out that line. In any case, the Gemara answers, Amar Ula says, Al Yedei Gilgal, we're talking here about Gilgal Shvuah, where he has to take a Shvuah anyway, so then he includes this within that Shvuah. The Amar Le, he says, Tim, Ishtabali Ezu Mihas to Chedarka Mesa, at least you should swear that it died Kedarka, that it died a normal death. Umigo de Mishtabed to Chedarka Mesa, once you're already taking a Shvuah that that's how it died, Mishtabanami de Schura Mesa, then you should also take a Shvuah that it was the rented one that died and not the borrowed one that died. And Rashi explains, V'amai mashatanu lo hodelo, why is this the case? Why does he take a shvuah? He's not admitting to what is being claimed. Now Rashi notes, Afagav du kimna bekofer umodin. Now we just said in the previous Amud, we made a complicated situation in the Mishnah where we're talking about multiple cows, and some he's admitting to, some he's denying. So there is a mode of a mixas over here. Why does the Gemara now say that there's no mode of a mixas? And the answer to that is simply, Hani mili Rav Nachman. Everything we said before was according to Rav Nachman. Because according to Rav Nachman, by Bari V'Shema, generally speaking, the Shema does not pay, and the only way Rav Nachman was able to explain the Mishnah that the Shema is paying over here is to say that there were multiple cows, there was admissions, and there was denials, meaning to say, again, it was mode of a mixas, and you had a shvuah that you couldn't take, because he said he didn't know about that other cow, and so therefore it's a situation of mitoch she'enu yachal ishava mishalim, that was just within Rav Nachman. Miu masnisin l'Rav Huna of Rav Yehuda kidekatani, but however, the Mishnah according to Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, you learn it just like it says in the Mishnah. You don't need to say that there's some shvuah that's not able to be taken. You don't need to add the situation where there's more cows. You don't need to say all of that according to Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, because they hold that the Mishnah is simply saying Bari V'Shema, Bari Adif. Since the mashal, since the lender has a certain claim and the borrower is not sure, therefore he has to pay. But the problem problem over here is Vama Yishava, but then in this case of the Mishnah, where the person making the claim is saying it's the borrowed one that died, and the other one responding is saying no, it was the rented one, why over here is there a shvu at all? Hare ein kan hodah b'mixas. You don't have moed b'mixas in this case. Again, this was the case in the Mishnah, which was not a case of bari v'shema. This was a case where he's responding that it was the rented one that died, but the problem is that's not moed b'mixas because he's not admitting to the claim, and so therefore why is he taking a shvua? And so the Gemara said it's through Gilgal shvua, ishtabu li ezu mias va'afilu hi sechura, meaning to say even if what you're saying is correct, that it was the rented one, yesh li olecha shvua, still there is an oath over here, shekeinu kidvarecha, because you have to swear that it actually did die a natural death, otherwise you're not going to be potter, you do have to take a shvua. The less lon de Rami Bar Chama, and the point over here says Rashi, is we don't hold of Rami Bar Chama, de boy kfira v'hoda b'shomrim, that when it comes to a shomer, you need to also have a mode of mixas, you need to have a denial and an admission. That's what Rami Bar Chama said. He said even by shvuas shomrim, you need to have that kind of mode of a mixas, but we don't hold like that. Because we hold like the one who says that it's a mixture of parshios, meaning to say that by shomrim there's just a shvuas shomrim, and then there's a separate idea of mode of a mixas. Meaning to say when it says ki huzen, the pasuk, which is the words that identify mode of a mixas, amilvahu dichsev, that's talking about a loan. That's not talking about by shomrim, because shomrim take shvuas even when you don't have mode of a mixas. That's how we hold, and therefore he does have to take a shvua here in terms of what happened to the animal. The Gilgal shvua min haTorah here, and furthermore Rashi says Gilgal shvua is a concept midoraisa miva amra ha'isha amen amen, that's learned from the pasuk v'amra ha'isha amen amen kedarshinan besota, like we darshan in sota, and so therefore through Gilgal shvua he's also going to take the oath that it's the rented one that died. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Zeh omer eini odeya v'zeh omer v'chulu. Let's say they both say they don't know in terms of which one died or at what point in time it died. So then the Mishnah said, Cholken, that we divided. And the Gemara says, Hamani sumchasi, who's the author of the Mishnah? It is sumchas. Damar maman hamutal b'safek. Cholken sumchas says that if you have money and there's a suffix, there's a doubt, then you divide the money. And the Gemara continues, Boy, Rabbi Abba bar Memel. Rabbi Abba bar Memel asked the following question. What if the person borrows it with the owners, meaning the owners are working for the person, for the borrower, and then he goes ahead and rents it, and the owners are no longer working for the borrower? What's the halacha? Mahu? What's the halacha in that case? Do we say that the borrowing is independent and the renting is independent, and therefore the renting is not considered a continuation of the borrowing, and so therefore the renter is going to be liable because the owners are not working with him? Maybe Schiras is considered like a continuation of the borrowing, because he's continuing to be chayiv in Geneva v'Aveda. He was chayiv if it was stolen or lost as a borrower. He continues to be chayiv if it's stolen or lost as a renter. So maybe it's a continuation, and then you do have the exemption of Ba'al Avimo. And Rashi explains, what happened was he borrowed it and the owners were working for him, and then before he returned it, he went ahead and he rented it from him. But at the time of the renting, the owner was not working with him any longer. Then it was stolen or lost. We may schiras during the time of the rental. Now, what's the halacha? Do we say that the rental is independent? It's like a new thing. Even though the original kinyan that was made when he did a mashicha, when he pulled the animal, the owners were working for him. And he didn't do another mashicha. He never made another kinyan. Nevertheless, he's going to be chayiv, because at the time of the rental, the only reason he didn't do a mashicha was because it was in his reshus. V'lo michzer mashicha. Mashicha wasn't needed. V'kani chatzei roba amira, and therefore his courtyard acquired it through speaking, through just saying that he wanted to make this deal. Uliolam kinyan achrisi, and really it's a new kinyan. V'shalo bebailim. It's considered to be a new kinyan, not bebailim. That's what we could say. Odilma tzchiras b'sheila meishach shaych, or maybe we say that the rental is like a continuation of the borrowing, meaning kol chiyuvei socher de geneva v'aveda yeshnan b'shoel, meaning everything that a renter is obligated in terms of geneva v'aveda, that existed by the shoel. V'lo hosef klum, nothing was actually added. Umachmas mashicha rishona bolo, and everything really, all these obligations are happening because of the original mashicha. V'ahi b'bailam havai, and that mashicha was done with the owners working for him, upater, and then he would be exempt. That's the question of the Gemara, and the Gemara continues along the same lines. If you're going to say that rental is considered like an extension of the original borrowing, what about the reverse? first case, Sachra b'baylam, Shala shalo b'baylam, what if he first rents it, and the owner is working for him, and then he borrows it, and the owner at that time is no longer working for him? What's the halach in that case? She'ela b'schiras vadei lo shaycha. Certainly, borrowing would not be considered like an extension of renting, because borrowing has more obligations, and so therefore it's like a new kinyan. Odilmar maybe kevan de shaycha b'miksa, since it is somewhat relevant because some of the obligations of a socher transfer over to the shoel. Keman de shaycha b'kula dami, so maybe it's completely relevant and it's considered to be an extension. And im timsa lomar lo amrinon kevan de shaycha b'miksa keman de shaycha b'kula dami. If you're going to say that we don't say that there's some relevance and therefore it's considered to be a complete continuation. Let's say we don't say that. What about the following? Shala b'baylam. Let's say he borrows it with the owners. V'sachra shalo b'baylam. Then he rents it not with the owners. V'chazar v'shalam out. But then he goes ahead and borrows it again. So what happens in that case? Hadar asila she'ela laduchta. Does the original borrowing go back to its place? It's all considered to be an extension of the original borrowing. Odilmar maybe afsiko la sechiras beini uveni. Maybe the fact that there was a sechiras in between, so that's like a separation, and now it's considered to be a new borrowing. And finally, the Gemara says, Sachra b'baylam v'shala v'chazar v'sachra ma. What if he first rents it with the owners, and then he goes ahead and borrows it, and then goes back to a rental? What's the halach in that case? Again, do we say that it's the original rental that's returning, and therefore it's considered a continuation of the original rental? Maybe maybe the borrowing creates like a separation, and this is a new kinyan, and therefore again it's going to be considered not bebailim. And the Gemara says, the Gemara leaves these questions unanswered. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hashoel asapar, if somebody borrows a cow, v'shilcha lo biad beno, biad avdo, biad shluch, when he sends it in the hands of his son, or his slave, or his agent, o biad beno, biad avdo, biad shlucho shel shoel, or let's say he sends it in the hands of the son, or the slave, or the agent of the shoel, v'meis, and it dies, potter, the shoel is going to be potter in that case. The point over here in the Mishnah is that the shoel does not take responsibility until it actually reaches him. And so therefore, if he's sending it with an agent, or his son, etc., in all of those situations, the shoel is potter because the cow has not actually reached the shoel. And Rashi explains, Biad beno hamashil shilcha lo l'shoel, biad beno shel mashil. The lender sent it with his son, or biad beno, biad avdo, biad shlucha shel shoel v'mesa potter, or even if it's with the son or the slave or the agent of the shoel, and it dies, he's potter mesa b'derech if it dies on the road. Now Rashi over here explains what exactly is happening, because here it sounds like it's the agent of the shoel. So why isn't the shoel responsible? That's a machlokas in Babba Kama. Pligi bar Rabba v'Rav Chisda is a machlokas amoroim between Rabba and Rav Chisda how to understand that. But Hagoz al Kama and Hagoz al Kama in Bava Kama. Rav Chisda metaretz lo lahai shlucho de shoel de masnisin b'sechiro ulakito shador bebeso aval ein edim sho shlucho. Rav Chisda says that this shliach of the shoel over here, we're talking about a situation of a person who works for the shoel, but there's no witnesses that he actually is his agent. Diika edim have a shlich, because if there was witnesses that he made him an agent, so he would be an agent. V'chayev hashol b'onsen, and then the borrower would be chayev in accidents. He would be chayev in onsen. Misham masrulo, from the moment that it's given over to him. That's the understanding of Rav Chisda. Rabba says afilu aso shliach be'edim. Even if the shoel made him an agent with witnesses, lav shliach u'leschayev al yodeh b'onsen, he's not considered an agent that now the shoel would be chayev in accidents. Tahachi kamerle, because all he's really saying is inish mehemnahu. This is a person I trust. Ibois l'shadure beyodeh shadar. If you want to send it with him, if you the mashal want to send it with him, you can do that, but I'm not taking responsibility again until it reaches me. And the Mishnah continues, Amar lo hashol. Now let's say the shoel actually says to the mashil, Shilchali biad bini, biad avdi, biad shluchi. Send it to me in the hands of my son, my slave, my agent, or biad bincha, biad avdecha, biad shluchacha, or send it in the hands of your son, your slave, your agent. O sha'amar lo hamashil, or let's say the lender says to him, Hareini mishalcha loch, biad bini, biad avdi, biad shluchi. I am sending it to you in the hands of my son, the hands of my slave, the hands of my agent. O biad bincha, biad avdecha, biad shluchacha, or I'm going to send it to you in the hands of your son, your slave, or your agent. V'amar le hashoel, and the shoel responds and says back, Shalach, you should send it. V'shilch, and he does so, he sends it in that fashion. V'mesa, and then the animal dies in transit, so then chayiv. Then the shoel is going to be chayiv, because the shoel essentially is agreeing that he's taking responsibility from the time that it gets into the hands of the son, or the agent, or the slave. And the Mishnah concludes, V'chein b'shasha machzira. Everything that we said in terms of the shoel receiving the animal is also true when he returns the animal. It's the same exact rules. It's still going to be in the shoel's responsibility, unless, again, the way that he was supposed to return it, the lender told him that you should return it in the hands of the son, the agent, or the slave. Rashi explains, V'chein b'shasha machzira, the same is true when he's returning it. Im sholach hashol biyad beno v'yavdo shlucho biyad avdo shlucho shal mashil. If the borrower sends it back in the hands of his son, his slave, his agent, or in the hands of the slave or the agent of the lender, lo yatsa merishuso shel shoel ad shetavo liyad mashil. In general, it doesn't leave the possession of the shoel till it gets to the mashil. V'yamesa v'derech chayiv, and if it dies on the road, the shoel is chayiv. Amar lo hamashil, but if the lender said, I want it returned in this fashion, shil chali, you should send it to me, or shomer lo hashol hareini mishalcha v'chulu, or the borrower says, I'm sending it in this fashion, v'yamar le hamashil shalach, and the mashal says, yes, do it that way, send it that way, v'shilcha, and he sends it in that way, v'meis, and it dies, pater, then he is exempt in that case, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tes Amud Aleph.